semi-structured, sort of informal conversation that has direction sometimes acts as better than a sermon, in my opinion. And I guess it also sort of depends who you choose to do it. And as usual, if this is something you'd be interested in doing, you can always come talk to me afterwards, and over the next, I don't do a ton of them, but I would love to, in time, be able to interview as many as possible. But today, we're interviewing Andrew Sterling, and so give him one more round of applause. So when we do these interviews, I prep with questions before, but Andrew and I have not talked a lot. We have confirmed that we have the same questions, and Andrew and I, we do go back about 4.5 years. And so we do have history, and so I'm actually pulling up the questions now that I sent him, which I wasn't ready with. And that's kind of how the day's gone. Ain't that, everybody? Where are you? Ready to stay cool. All right, I got it. So one thing to start, Andrew, welcome to the stage.
Thank you.
One interesting thing about you.
One interesting thing about me is that I am a writer. I love to write short
Oh,
stories, fiction, a whole lot. So that's my passion.
Give us one title of a work that you've worked on. One title.
The Genesis event.
Ooh, that sounds.
I want to read it.
That sounds theologically charged. Wow. All right. So we're gonna. Andrew has had a lot happen in his life, and we're gonna. There's a lot of directions we could go, but I'm gonna ask a couple introductory questions, and then we're gonna really get into the last 4 years of your life, and kind of glean what we can from it. So hopefully it'll be helpful. So can you start by sharing a bit about yourself, where you grew up, formative moments in your childhood or young adulthood? Kind of start there, and that'll give us kind of a lead into the other things that we'll be doing.
Absolutely, yeah. So I was born in Michigan, but when I was about 1 or 2 years old, my parents got divorced, and so I moved down to, my mom got remarried a few years later, and we all moved down to Toledo, Ohio. I was in a suburb called Sylvania. That's where I kind of grew up, did a lot of my formative years. But yeah, I grew up a Kingdom kid. I always was a part of the church, in and out. My mom stayed a part of the church. My dad left, and he remarried, and it was a tough time for me for sure. But it was a lot of good things came out of it, like my half siblings and my step siblings, which I love. But anyways, moving down to Toledo, it was different. It was cool though. It was I met a lot of great friends down there. Had a lot of great experiences growing up. After being a Kingdom kid, I kind of became part of the teen ministry, and we started with about 10 people, and I started to grow close to a lot of them, but there was always a kind of a separation there. I never really got super close to anyone, and it didn't help that by the time that I graduated, there was 2 of us left. And there was 4 baptized teen disciples, and 2 of them walked out, walked away from the church, and they were 2 of my good friends, so it definitely hurt and it definitely stunk. But I got through that and went on to go to college at Eastern Michigan.
Go Eagles.
Go Eagles.
Go Eagles. So when we talk about being a Kingdom kid, it's kind of our lingo for you grew up in our family of churches, right? So that was your experience, but it wasn't a glorious one, at least in your kind of the youth ministry you were a part of really kind of broke apart.
Yeah.
Have you figured out how that impacted you at the time?
Definitely. I think that relationship building definitely hurt, because when we were down to a few people. I started to build really strong relationships with the campus, the campus kids, and there was one that I particularly grew really close to, and he ended up falling away as well. So it was like, I think building relationship was definitely the biggest kind of struggle that came out of that.
Yeah, it's hard to watch your friends kind of drop like flies.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You kind of start to think like, why am I even doing this?
Right.
So fast forward a little bit. Andrew, we're going to talk about this, but Andrew himself has had a journey in like close to God, away from God, close to the church, away from the church, and back. I really want to talk about that story. Like the first time you decided to follow Jesus, you became a Christian. Why'd you make that decision? Let's just start there. Like when you first became a disciple, when was that, and why did you choose that?
Yeah. So I was 14 years old when I first got baptized, which in hindsight was a little young. I definitely don't really fully think I understood what I was doing at the time. But I was coming fresh off of teen camp, which our churches put on these awesome church camps. And I was since I was in Toledo, I was going down to Cincinnati. I had a lot of awesome friends down there, a lot of awesome leadership down there. I was just feeling like super on fire for God, and it was definitely temporary. It wasn't anything sustainable, but I used that momentum, and I kind of felt like it was something that I was always going to do. It felt like an expectation almost on myself, but also from my parents, my mom and my stepdad. I just felt like it was something I was going to do eventually anyways, so I kind of was like, all right, let's do this. Like, I love God, like, I want to do this, and it just kind of felt like the logical next step for me.
Yeah, I am 14. I actually also was baptized at 14. It's like, well, your motivation's mixed always.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I've met anyone that has perfect motivation to get baptized.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like some people are just like, this place is pretty cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna go for it, and maybe not quite that simple, but generally we're pretty complicated people, right? So it makes sense that in 14, perhaps we're a little less complicated at 14. Or maybe more, I don't know, maybe more. But it makes sense coming off that youth camp, you're like, well, I was always thinking I was going to do this, you've always believed in God in a sense, so I'm going to do this. So fast forward a little bit, you at some point left, right? You tried to live a Christian life, which is uniquely challenging in high school, but you kind of made it through, but it was ragged, it was hard, because at least your youth ministry you detailed to us was like, kind of had fallen apart. You came to college, and you were still a disciple. This is actually close to the time I think I met you. Maybe that was a little later. I think, how old were you when we met? 4.5 years ago?
I was about 21.
Yeah, it's like math.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't tell you I wouldn't do math. If people ask a math question in front of people, I would freak. I'd really stop. So 21. So can you tell us a little bit about what motivated your decision to step away from God and subsequently the church?
Absolutely. It was definitely a rough time in my life. It was a time where I was kind of super burnt out on life. I was working about 40 hours a week. I was doing about 16 credit hours at school. I was going to church events I had, and kind of something that I carried over from my teen and my early preteen years was I always kind of lived a double life. I always had my church self and then my school and friends self that I was, and I feel like I always had some kind of girlfriend or something like that on the side that would kind of take me away from really committing to myself to Jesus, and that kind of continued into my college years, and so I had a girlfriend for about 3 years at that point. It was in the middle of that 3 years that we were together, and I would go over to her house every weekend, and I was in the habit of going to church, right? Like leaving her house to go to church, but I kind of just was burnt out, and I felt like I wasn't getting fulfilled with church, and which makes a lot of sense because I didn't really give my full heart. I didn't give my full self to God, and of course, I wasn't going to feel fulfilled from that.
Right.
So I just got burnt out and kind of started to question my beliefs, and ended up with me kind of taking a step back and stopped going to church.
So the questioning of your beliefs,
Yeah.
you attributed that to your own efforts.
Yeah.
Like you kind of connect those dots. Like you feel like you started to drift away, kind of live that double life. And subsequently, the questions began to arise, like the doubts came.
Yes.
So you see a clear correlation between the choices you made with your life to the doubts that you had.
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting point because there's a really, really interesting verse in John 7 where people are questioning Jesus and they're like, hey, how do we know what you're saying is true? And he famously says, well, if you live this out, you'll know. And it's kind of a paradox, right?
Yeah.
Like we talked about this actually last week. It is a paradox because that's not how we usually think about things. Like, convince me, and then I will do it.
Right.
But actually, living it
Yeah.
will convince you. But it takes a lot of courage to do that. But it works in reverse as well, unfortunately. Like, when you choose to stop living it, often, I don't think doubts are always connected to sin, but they often are, right? And in your case, it was. And so you decided to walk away. I imagine that was a painful decision. Why? I in fact remember that. Like, I remember being close and enjoying our friendship. I remember feeling like some 4 years ago we would get together, like I couldn't tell what was missing. You know what I mean? Like, there was no problem with your brain. You're a super smart guy. You've been around, and you knew what was right, but just felt like you couldn't carry it out. You just felt like you just can't do this. And so, in one sense, I really appreciated the integrity you had. I think the way you left. Well, I never want anyone to leave. I didn't feel like you just ghosted everybody. We talked about it. You know, take some time away, and I think that decision needs to be respected, right? Like, people need to go on their journey.
Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about? I know that it probably didn't start then, but from that point forward, the next, I guess, 2.5, 3 years were pretty dark times in your life. I wondered if you could share about what you went through the last 3 years, like when you were away from God. And my understanding is that all of the darkness wasn't correlated to be away from God. Some of the tragedy you faced would have happened whether you were close to God or not. But I think it's important. You know, it'd be great for you to share a little bit about what you went through in those times.
Yeah, it was indeed very dark times for me. It kind of all stemmed from COVID, actually. COVID hit when I was about 2 or 3 semesters into college. And when that hit, it kind of shut everything down. And I always felt like I had depression. It was always kind of on the back of my mind. And I've had times where I've cried to friends or cried to my mom about not wanting to live anymore. But it was always temporary, and it never really lasted, so I never really thought I had much of a problem. But when COVID kind of shut everything down, I had a bunch of feelings of isolation and just loneliness, and that kind of spiraled into my schoolwork. I started having to take online classes for the first time, and I just didn't realize that I couldn't handle that. I couldn't handle online classes, like just I couldn't motivate myself to do the work, and that ended up with me failing. I failed out of college and that semester, and I just, as soon as that happened, I adopted the philosophy of, all right, I can't do this, I can't do life. I'm broken, I'm dysfunctional, I don't have what it takes to live the life I want to live. So I just decided at that point that I wasn't going to live anymore. I was just going to do whatever I wanted to do, and try to fill my life with something before I ended up taking my own life. And this was my plan. And the only thing that kind of kept me around was my mom. I couldn't do that to my mom. I love my mom so much. She was a huge supporter in my life. She was so pivotal in the man that I've become, and I still feel her in my life to this day. And that's when 2022 rolled around, and I was working, as I often would. I had already kind of failed out of school, but I was telling people that I was still in school, I was doing fine. On the outside, it looked like I was doing very well, but on the inside, I was broken. And so after 2022, during 2022, I was working, and I get a text message from my aunt, who I never get text messages from. So this is definitely weird. So I look at it, and she's just saying, "Hey, if there's anything I can do for you, please let me know." So I was like, "Okay, that's weird." So then I looked, and I had a missed call from my brother Isaiah, and he would call me for random reasons, just to goof around and joke around. So I wasn't really taking that seriously at all. And then I got a call from my stepdad Nate, and so I was like, all right, this is the third mode of communication from my family, so I have to take this. So I took the call, and he said that they were at, it was my mom, my dad, my stepdad, and my brother were at a church get together, and it was hot out, and they were walking, and my mom just collapsed, and she hit the ground pretty hard and hit her head, and he didn't give me too many details, but he's basically like, if you can, like, get down here, get down to South Carolina, because when I moved up to college, for college to Michigan, they moved to South Carolina, and so I didn't know how I was going to get there. Thankfully, one of my other aunts, whose husband, my uncle, is a pilot, she offered for me to fly down there, so I flew down there, and I went straight to the hospital and talked to everyone there, and I got to see my mom. It was eerie, it was surreal, it was just weird to see her just lifeless, because she was a small person, and she's kind of quiet, but man, she filled up a room when she was in it. And it was just so weird to see, just nothing but breathing. And I didn't notice it at the time, but there was kind of witnessed a miracle. My stepbrother, or my stepdad, and my brother Isaiah, she had actually, her heart stopped, and she was dead. And then my brother went in to say his goodbyes, and he said something along the lines of, we still need you, like, we still need you. And her heart started again.
Wow.
I 100% believe that God restarted her heart, so I got to say goodbye to her. And so I got to say my goodbye. I got to just kind of confess my life, and I told her everything that was going on, and because I had lied to her up until that point, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I just told her everything, and even though I don't know if she heard me or not, but I told her everything, and we made the decision that next time she kind of coded, it was going to be the end, and she did, and I had to say goodbye, and it was something that took me from being low to very, very low, and I just felt just incapacitated by life. And a little bit later on in the year, I ended up losing my job. The company I worked for went out of business, and then my car broke down, and I just felt like nothing. And it was around this time, a few months afterward, my girlfriend and I broke up, so I was completely alone. And thankful, or I don't know the word for it, but it was kismet, I guess, that I had met someone else, and this person was someone that I had known for a long time, but we kind of went our separate ways in life, and after we had reconnected, we kind of fell in love, and it was this, we were talking every day. It was like the one thing I felt like I found a purpose in again, and we were great. We fought every now and then, but it was real, it was visceral. It was really the first time that I felt like true love. And then around October, we got in a really bad fight, and it lasted like all night, and I thought it was the end. And the one thing I kind of had left to live for was gone. And so I hung up the phone with her, and I grabbed the pocket knife out of my drawer, and I walked down to the park that was about a mile or two from my house, and I was gonna end my own life. I was really close. I have a scar on my left wrist that I slit my wrist, and I don't know, once I did that, something kind of came over me, and I just felt like I can't handle this on my own anymore. And I contacted emergency services. They came, they helped me out. They took me to the hospital, got me stitched up, and I went to a facility, inpatient facility for a week, and I made the decision that I wanted to live again in that week. I got on medication, I got weekly therapy, and I really started to turn things around. I wish that's where the dark times ended, but unfortunately there's a little bit more darkness before the light. It was about 6 months after that. I was still unemployed. I was looking for a job at Ford. My dad worked there for like 20 years, and he was confident that he could get me in, but that didn't work out. And then I kind of rekindled the relationship that I had with the person that I was in love with, and but then she started meeting other people, and just kind of our relationship kind of fizzled, and I just felt alone again. And this time I didn't want to take a knife, so I went to my dad's room and I got his gun out of his drawer, and my sister was the only one there, and she was just pleading and begging, like she'd been through so much herself, and so she was like walking behind me, and I was sounding weird. I felt weird and different, and the person that I was in love with, I ended up calling the police, and they stopped me when I was walking out the door with my sister trailing behind me, just begging for me to turn around and just go back home. But they stopped me and talked to me for a bit, and that's when they found the gun on me, and they arrested me and put me in the back of the squad car and took me back to the hospital. Went through another week of inpatient facility, and that time was truly a difference maker. That time really turned it around for me. It changed the way I viewed myself. There was so many people there. By the time I left, they were crying and they were hugging me. And to have that type of impact on someone that I had just met only a week before, it really showed me the value in my own life. So I got through that, and that was last summer, so it's been almost a year now. I've been still keeping up with my medication, I've been keeping up with therapy, and I've been feeling great.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's, hard to share all that.
Yeah.
And the reason I wanted you to share it because you share it like that. Like, you're just so well spoken. The combination of your mother and the depression and those suicidal moments and the darkness and the emotional swings, like I think you share it so well. And obviously, like, it's in the rear view mirror, but I think even for you to share like objects in the mirror are closer than they appear. They're like kind of close. I think that's why I extra respect you for being willing to share it in this current space. And I never had the privilege, I don't think, of meeting your mom, but she's a big presence in a lot of people's lives in this room, actually. And her impact is echoed, obviously, in a great way. And so thanks for sharing that as well. And special thank you to sharing about kind of the suicide attempts. I think that for a lot of people, that's not something that a lot of people are willing to share. And I would say that would be okay as long as somebody knows in your life and you're working through it. But it's interesting because, like, it's often true that when we want to pursue God, sometimes we have to heal before we can even do it. This happens to a lot of people that are struggling with mental health or substance abuse or things in that space. Like, there's this passage where Jesus walks up to this guy who's crippled by this well, and he's been sitting there for like 30 years, something like that. And the guy believed that if he were to get into this well, he believed that an angel would stir the water and they would be healed. And I think it's John 5, he has this really famous line where Jesus walks up to him. This guy's been an invalid for I think it's 38 years or something. And Jesus looks at him and he's like, "Do you want to get well?" And you're reading it and you're like, is that kind of an offensive question? Like, what do you think, you know?
Right.
And the guy's response is really instructive because he
Yes.
says, he makes an excuse.
Yep.
He doesn't just say yes.
Right.
He's like, well, every time I try to get into the water, like someone goes in ahead of me. And Jesus is like, get up, take your mat. You know, can you imagine that? Like, whoa, you know. And then he has this spiritual conversation with him, and the story goes on. This happens a couple times actually in the scriptures, where Jesus will heal someone physically, and that will be the beginning of their spiritual journey.
Yeah.
It happens later in John 8, 9, 10 with the blind man. Kind of goes on, and it's interesting because I don't always think that spiritual healing and physical healing or like neurological healing always happen simultaneously, but I do think they need each other for wholeness. Right?
Yes.
Like, I think it's true that you can heal physically or neurologically and not heal spiritually.
Yes.
The problem is the odds of you getting back into that feel higher. You described
Yes.
that actually. Like, you did have a moment of great healing, but then you sunk back into it because spiritually you were still not who you had now become.
Yeah.
What was different the second time was this spiritual moment where you understood. I thought you put it really well. I kind of learned my value. Like,
Yes.
that my life was worth living.
Yes.
It's just really powerful, man. And
Yeah.
so
It's beautiful.
bring us into the light. You know what I mean? Bring us out of that. So okay, so you have this really great, and you're like, okay, I really want to be different. This is just under a year ago now. Can you tell us about the journey back? Like, why did you decide, and how did you get here now, and what's different now than was, well, I mean, I guess we're talking about since you were 14, but especially in 5 years. Like, what's changed for you? What's made it possible for you to have a different experience as a disciple now?
Absolutely, yeah. It's God, man. God really just worked out in my life, and I feel like now I have a relationship with Him where I never felt that before. Like, I never felt like He was my friend or that He was my father. I felt like He was just this kind of distant, kind of off entity that I would worship, and He was good, and I never had a problem with God, but I never felt close to Him. And just going through the things that I went through, and just the little things that if it just went a different way, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And God just brought me through all of that. And even like not being able to ever fully be with the person that I fell in love with, I feel like God protected me from that too, because it would have been a very toxic relationship, and it would not have been good for me at all. And I think that if I was to be in a relationship with her, I don't know if I would have come back to church. So I think that God really, really worked in my life, and I felt Him work in my life. And to have done the things that I did, and to have walked away from God, and still He comes for me, and
Yeah.
He still comes
Yeah.
for my heart, Lord. And that just kind of overwhelmed me, and I was kind of feeling these things, and then I was still getting together with some people from church, and Martin invited me out, and I was like, yes, I want to go. I feel like I never really gave God a fair shake, never gave Him a fair chance, and I never really fully understood what it was like to be a disciple. And going through the studies with Chad and Martin and Owen and Ethan a little bit as well, it really opened my eyes to what that the life that I wanted was possible, and it was only possible through God.
Yeah.
Somebody write it down. Quoted for 1,000 years. I remember when you came back, that outdoor service.
Yeah.
Just so you know, if we ever do an outdoor service, expect rain.
Yes.
So annoying. But I remember, I think you even did you win the egg toss?
Yeah.
Shine on you. Were you with Max?
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. Nice job. Yeah, it's cool. It's interesting how like the answer is simple. It's like so not simple. Like when I say like what's different, you just say God. You know, like if a preacher says that, not that I ever call myself a preacher, but if somebody's speaking and says God's the answer, people are like, all right, you know what I mean? Duh, you know, I'm at church. Like what did I think you were gonna say? I think when you say it in that context, it feels a little different.
Yes.
For sure.
Because now that you've told us so much about your life, it is actually it's not always simple to do, but it's not difficult to understand.
Yeah.
And I feel like when you talk about your kind of spiritual resurgence and what was different, I feel like it was just a decision like, I think I can become this guy that I want to be. And I even like how you put, like, I never had a problem with God, but I was just never felt close to him.
Yeah.
So, you were baptized, where are we at now? A couple months ago?
Yeah, a couple months, yeah.
And I remember when you came out of the water, you cheered. You probably already feel this from Andrew now. He's a pretty quiet dude. Remember your arms came up. And can you describe a little bit, like, I know I didn't prep you for this question, but like what you felt like when you came out? Because you studied the Bible, you went through it all with Chad and Martin and Owen and Ethan. You saw it perhaps, like for the first time. It wasn't the first time you'd heard these things, but it's so true with the Bible that this is why whenever you ask somebody if you're sharing your faith and you say, oh, have you ever read the Bible? Or you say, you go to church and they say, well, I've read the Bible. You're like, well, yeah, you can read it 1,000,000 times and not glean half.
Yeah.
Just like, because your life circumstances changes how you read, like how you see it, how it hits you. Which is why we always need to be reading our Bible. It's kind of a really annoying church refrain, like, how's your Bible reading? Like, and when people get annoyed by that, but they're not doing it, I'm like, you're not allowed to be annoyed. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're not feeling the impact of God's word. So what, like, can you describe, and then we'll close in a moment, maybe one more question, what you felt like when you got baptized? Like why the cheer? Like what was it that was going through your mind?
Yeah, it just felt like a victory for me. Like it felt like when I came out of that water, I just felt pure.
Yeah.
And not in like a lot of sense that we kind of get the word pure from, but I just felt like no blemishes, and I felt like I had been forgiven for things that I did not deserve to be forgiven for.
Yeah.
And I just felt like this surge of just energy, and I just threw my hands up in the air because I knew that I was saved. And
Yeah.
Amen.
Amen.
I want to give you a chance. Is there anything you wanted to share to church or any kind of parting thoughts? Not that you're going anywhere except just like to your seat, but you're here now. You have the mic. Like we've been on pins and needles, like listening. Like, is there anything else that you wanted to share?
absolutely, I think you kind of talked about it a little bit, but I think the one of the biggest things that I took away from like just kind of thinking about my own story and thinking about what I've been through is just the importance of mental health and the importance of having a healthy relationship with your own mind. I think that until I was able to get on medication, get on therapy, kind of heal those wounds, I wasn't able to really fully go after God.
Mm-hmm.
So if there is anything that you are struggling with, whether it be mental health or substance abuse or any other type of abuse, like that is something that I feel like you have to get right with before you can really truly pursue God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to read a verse just to double down on what you said. There's a great passage in John 10. Jesus talks about his role in our lives. And most commonly, I think God called himself a father, but perhaps the most famous identification Jesus gives to us is as our shepherd. And he talks about like the thief is not really the shepherd, like they just come to kill and steal and destroy. And in verse 7 he says, I tell you the truth, I am the gate for the sheep. All who ever came before me were thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate, whoever enters through me will be saved. He will come in and go out and find pasture. I love that line. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. And I love that because there's the connotation there is that God came to give you life to the full, not just like a saved life. Like, and I've known a lot of people that they believe they're saved, and I think they are as well. They've gone through that process and they've really fought for it, but they're not joyful. Like they're not fulfilled. And I think a lot of that speaks to what you're talking about. There is a healing aspect, right? Like that people have to go through. So obviously, like the message is whatever you think the message is for you. I think for some people, there's a frustration in their inability to be close to God, but they often are not doing the things they need to heal. Like, and I think that the responsibility for healing is on us.
Yes.
It's like we can't control how other people treat us. We can't go back in time, unfortunately, and change the things that happened, though I think oftentimes we wish we could. And other people often are the reason that we're broken, but we can't let them remain the reason we remain broken,
Yeah.
right? And I feel like for you've done a great job with this, right? Like there's a lot of things you could look to. I think other men might have said, God, you took my mother from me. But the way you talk about your mom, you just talk about her like she's still there. And Christians do believe that, right? Like we have a lot of reason to believe it because Jesus came back, you know? So it's like, brings everybody else back too, and your mom's doing great right now. You know what I mean? And I don't know how it works. Like we're not given any real idea from God, like what is it like for the people that have passed. But I'm definitely a believer, and God being like, what was your mother's name again?
Sure.
What was your mom? Sure. I'm definitely a believer in him being like, sure, I'll come over. You know what I mean? Like, check it out. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know how it works, like, but I really think that the way you've processed your life, I just really admire that. Like, you process your pain so beautifully. Like, you've not allowed it to, you haven't become a victim because of it, but you were a victim of horrible circumstances, but you didn't allow that to be your identity. And I think a lot of people in this room have done that, and I just, so much respect, you know, and it's just awesome. And I do think you've honored your mom's legacy. You honor our church as being part of our church. And I feel really grateful for this time right now. It was amazing. So, man, I love you, bro, and thanks for sharing.